every single Global 2000 and Fortune 500, right? The number one question everyone is asking is, how do we prevent cost overruns as models improve, right? You start to realize that if you give everybody in the company a coding agent, it starts to get really expensive really quickly, right? The second is, how do we make sure that we're always using the best possible AI models at any given moment? There's a different model that comes out on top for different tasks almost every single day. And at any given moment, the best model for task A tends to not be the best model for task B. And then when you introduce the price factor, what you get is a Pareto frontier of cost and quality that is very difficult to access when you are vendor locked to one model provider. And ultimately, what happens to software engineers? What is the evolving role of software developers in this new software factory system? And how does that change the way that organizations operate? Hopefully, by the end of this, we've got at least a couple of answers to these big questions, right? And so I alluded to this idea that code is just a small portion of what developers do. Ultimately, in a product development or software development lifecycle, developers are spending a bunch of time on code review, they're spending time on testing, debugging. For everyone here who has access to some degree of agentic capabilities in your software teams, you have almost certainly seen that the bottleneck effectively just shifted. And this is what leads to the current sentiment where people are looking at like ROI and outcomes, and they're being promised by people who need to IPO in the next 6 months that they're going to 10x. But in reality, they're seeing maybe 10%, 20%, and some teams even can get as much as 30%, right? And so where is that bottleneck actually happening? Where has it shifted to? And why aren't we seeing 10x? Are some of the things that we think are addressed by the knowledge that coding is not everything. It is just a fraction of the story. And really, we think that you can actually model all software teams and software systems as feedback loops, where signals from the outside world about what your software should be filter in on one end. And these signals could be business requirements, customer calls, bug reports, Sentry alerts, Snowflake data updates, like all of these signals, right, come in. And today, humans drive those signals through this pipeline of triaging them, figuring out, do they need to be addressed, creating plans around them, writing code. Then they review, they test, they QA, they validate, they deploy. And ultimately, when you have deployed monitored software, what happens is it generates more signals. And so what if you could instrument this entire loop with AI systems such that they could facilitate the transformation of those signals into software and accelerated this end-to-end feedback loop, right? That is the software factory's sort of core central data model and premise. Now, before I get into sort of what AI can tactically do at each of those stages, I want to talk about some very critical principles of what your software factory should be. I've already alluded to this idea of being model agnostic, right? But I want to go a little bit further and actually say sort of emphatically that at any given moment, if you choose to vendor lock yourself to where your harness is the same as your model, then you are simply choosing to only have the best at one point in time model for a given task. If you think about coding, code review, incident response, documentation, testing, right now, there's actually multiple different models that are frontier at those different tasks. And what's interesting is open models have gotten so good that it's started to become clear that not only are there frontier models that get really good at maybe like some 5% of tasks, but the vast majority of tasks do not actually need a quote unquote frontier model. They can be accomplished quite easily with an open model. And so if you had, for example, an auto model router that could route perfectly to the task based on the cost and quality concerns of your organization, and you had access to every possible model, then you'd be able to access the true frontier of what's possible. Basically, you can get either the best model that one lab offers you, or you can get the best model at any given moment, right? And so being model agnostic is unbelievably critical to your software factory strategy. The second thing is that you need a sovereign deployment, right? You should own every single stage of your software factory's lifecycle. Now, that could be that you trust the provider that provides you that SaaS, right? We have a SaaS model for some of our deployments, and we think that's super important. It's very easy to get deployed. But if you need on the total other end a fully air-gapped deployment where you control every aspect and dimension of your software factory, you should be able to get that, right? And your provider should be able to give that to you without saying, well, actually, we will index all of your code though, and don't worry, that won't go into the next model, wink, right? right? Like that is not something that you should accept if you're building a software factory that is about to become the underlying premise of your entire company's software system. And finally, we think this should operate across the SDLC, right? So I already sort of talked about that, but it is sort of a worthwhile point to say that as you build shared context across these stages, it's super critical that your factory is operating, right? And so when I think about some of the automations or autonomous systems that are a part of the software factory, things like code review, where every single change gets a review from an agent, security analysis, where after you've established an initial stride framework analysis on top of your code base and said, this is the threat model, every additional code change can be analyzed and it can pair with your SAST tools, your security scanners, to say, not only can we detect every possible issue, but we can actually exercise those code paths and determine the real security issues that you need to care about. QA, where an agent uses computer control to, on the web, desktop, CLI, or API you created, actually use those tools like a human would and tell you, what's the user journey like? Did something break in an unexpected way? Documentation that automatically maintains itself on every single code change. Incident response that triages each issue and ultimately either mitigates or at the very least hands to the human a huge amount of context on how to mitigate and resolve the issue. And automated deployment that makes every release, every merge, every change log fully automated from start to finish, right? And you should do that with an agent that is accessible on any surface, right? So you should not have one agent for code review and then another for using it in the CLI, and then you switch to between two different frontier agent harnesses for depending on the task. Like ultimately, that's sort of messy, right? The model is the thing that creates one of the biggest differences in experience. And then the surface is the second biggest thing, right? When you use it in the IDE versus when you use it in the terminal versus when you use it in the desktop, there's probably like 95% of the things that you'd want to be the same. And then there's some great things like, for example, when you're in CI/CD, you're not actually looking at an interface. So how should the ergonomics and the UX of your agent change based on that? Well, there's a lot of investment that goes into doing that. But if you have an agent, then making it accessible to any surface helps accelerate your software factory deployment by building a shared mental model between the people who are synchronously using the agent and the automations that happen underneath the hood, right? When you say, like, for example, from a governance perspective, every agent that accesses this plugin should only be allowed to use these tools if their IAM profile says so, then why should that not apply to the desktop and the code review agent and the doc agent at the same time, right? So having that same agent across the SDLC, across models, across surfaces is one of the most important strategies. And when you're thinking about rolling this stuff out, there is a laundry list of governance and policies that you need to be thinking about. And this is the sort of thing like, that I know that there's like a flu or a cold going around in SF right now. And so a bunch of my friends have gotten sick. One of the things that I thought was hilarious is this idea of when you get like a sore throat, there's no moment that you realize that not having a sore throat is great, except for once you've gotten the sore throat. And I think that all of these policies are like the definition of the, oh, I guess I'm not really sure if I need that until you get the sore throat. And then you're like, man, I really wish that I had this level of governance in these AI systems that I'm effectively giving some of the most unfettered access that I've ever given to anybody in the company, right? And so identity, model controls, data and privacy concerns, agent controls, right? I should be able to dictate every single action at the org, group, user, team, project level. And then being able to understand every action that was taken from your agents are super critical. And so once you've got the agents in place, you've got the automations in place, you have the policies in place, does that mean that the software factory immediately turns on? No. What I would posit is that one of the biggest blockers to actually getting an effective software factory has nothing to do with the tech risk of the actual underlying agent platform, right? We can sort of check all those boxes pretty easily, in fact. What ends up happening is that you realize that your entire engineering system is not built around the concept of 24/7 agents, right? And so we have this concept of what we call agent readiness that says there are hundreds of these principles that your organization should be following in order to be ready for agents. And that could mean on the code base side, do you have linters? Do you have type checkers? Do you have deterministic unit tests, end-to-end tests, smoke tests, right? It could be, is your build system repeatable? In CI, how much of the code paths are you exercising? If you want to ask an agent to performance optimize the start time of your program, do you have something that can profile that program, right? Is the agent going to be able to read any of those analytics? If the answers are no to these things, then agents are not going to be helpful regardless of how competent the system is. Now, what's cool is that agents are competent enough to recognize when you do or do not have these things, and you can then remediate not having these things with agents. So this is not just like a laundry list of homework to be done. It's more or less a checklist of things where across these 150 plus signals, if you say, oh, actually, I don't have a performance analyzer, click the button and let a droid or an agent, go in and add the performance analysis tooling into the code base, right? And if you do this, you can start to build this sort of framework of understanding, hey, some organizations are at like level 1, level 2 code bases. It means agents are not going to be productive. They're going to be breaking frequently. And a lot of the time, I think people talk about like greenfield versus brownfield development, right? Where agents are sort of trivially good at greenfield development, where they make things from scratch, versus people have a harder time getting agents to succeed in brownfield environments. What I would actually argue is that that distinction is a proxy for agent readiness. And what tends to be true is that brownfield code bases are less agent ready than greenfield code bases, because that greenfield code base that you're working with an agent is, by the nature of an agent generating the code, operating in a distribution that is very known to the agent. And so if you start to bring in these agent readiness tools, and you actually instrument across build system reliability, linting, type checking, code quality, there's a bunch of them, then you can actually bring the level of quality that you see with greenfield development to your brownfield code bases. There's some great research out of Stanford, the DevProd org, that looked at a bunch of Fortune 500 companies that had deployed AI. And they said, can we predict what is accelerating end-to-end feature delivery timelines with AI? Is it token spend? No. Is it number of users using AI? No. Is it proficiency of the top 10% of AI users? No, right? Basically, the answer was no, no, no. Now, it turns out you can predict the magnitude of something important, acceleration or deceleration of your software delivery timelines. And what's funny is then they asked engineering leaders, do you know if AI is accelerating or decelerating your product lifecycle timelines? Engineering leaders could not even predict if AI was actually slowing them down, right? The only thing that was able to predict acceleration versus deceleration was the 150 signals that you can tool up in your code base today and determine if you're agent ready or not, right? And so that is one of the biggest problems that we see, is just sort of conflating brownfield and greenfield with agent readiness. And so we're agent ready, we've got the tools, we've got a software factory running. What are humans doing, right? What has become clear to us, and we have some of the largest in production, fully autonomous software agent deployments in the world right now. There are some orgs that have 15,000 plus developers who do not use, there's no way to use Droid in a non-autonomous fashion, right? So this is different from like a Copilot experience. You are directly delegating to the agents to actually go in and run and execute. For the longest Droid runs are in a product we have called Missions that actually operate for 14 to 15 days continuously without human intervention, right? And so in these deployments where you have tens of thousands of people doing this, do we see less human involvement, more? What do humans do? Like, what we have seen is that humans tend to become stewards of this new software factory system, right? So they're looking and observing when a signal comes in on one side and a code change is generated. How accurate is that? Oh, I noticed that it didn't generate code because it's missing this context. So what's the solution? Build an integration to bring that context to the agent, right? Oh, I noticed that it's constantly breaking in prod because we're breaking the entry points to the code base. You build a linter that prevents any coding agent in the future from ever breaking that path, right? Humans start to build linters, type checkers that are customized. They start to build connectors of data and context. They start to form policies that, in the form of skills and plugins, that guide the agents as they operate. And this loop that happens is you observe, you intervene on the software factory, you refine the rules, policies, governance, and context the software factory has, and ultimately you decide your strategy and risk tolerance as these agents start to interact and build. And to us, this actually might be a bigger role than software engineering in general, because it is a lot more accessible. It's easier to understand where things go right and wrong, and it also goes deeper because anytime you move up the ladder of abstraction, you know, all of that underlying abstraction still exists. So people who understand the whole pipeline have an advantage. So from our perspective, there's not enough focus on basically expansion of what's possible compared to efficiency gains. And you know, I'd argue this is actually at the executive level as well. People come to us and initially say things like, we're looking for efficiency. And I say, okay, cool, that's like 20%, but what about revenue expansion? What about new markets? What about expanding what your software can do? And that opens their eyes because they're like, wait, I guess if I have some, you know, valuable resource and they are the driver of my main revenue source and they can now do 10 times more, maybe I should just see what happens when I keep them along and upskill them, right? So for us, it's a very optimistic outlook for engineers. And I think it's sort of counter to the public narrative right now that like engineering is over. And so with these last like minute, 30 seconds, what I'd like to talk about is the last and arguably most important thing that could be its own 30-minute talk, which is you need to be measuring outcomes. You should not be measuring tokens. The labs want you to token max, right? We want you to outcome max and token min. That is an incredibly important difference. And ultimately, if you focus on cycle time, you focus on things like autonomy ratio, code shelf life, incident MTTR, things that actually move to your underlying business, what I would recommend is that every organization here think about their Google metric, right? There's that legend about how Google found every reduction in latency on their search page led to a meaningful increase in dollar revenue. Every business in the world has some proxy of their revenue metrics. It's just very hard to identify. And as you start to realize what engineering metrics are tied to revenue, the closer you can get to, hey, Droid, you know, make me $1 billion business, right? And we think that this exists for almost every business in the world. It's just very hard to disentangle the intermediary metrics from the actual goal outcomes. So if there's anything you take away, I would say, one, invest in agent readiness. Like, I know that I'm here like talking about our platform. I mean, we do have this, but you can do this independent. You don't need us to invest in agent readiness. The governance, that's a lot harder to do without us, but ultimately, I would just be thinking about it, right? Thinking about what policies matter, how does identity work, where does this sort of start to become an issue? And finally, think about what outcomes you actually care about. Do not measure lines of code. Look at product, feature delivery, project delivery, and all of the underlying metrics that account for your business's success. That's the last slide. Thank you.
Millions of people rely on water sources that are really monitored, not because it's unimportant, but because it's expensive and sparse.
Water quality monitoring today depends on physical sampling, which is costly, infrequent, and limited to a small number of locations. In this competition, we were only given data from just 162 monitoring stations, but asked to predict water quality at entirely unseen locations.
Zero overlap, no direct measurements, only data and physics. This is fundamentally hard because most machine learning models rely on seeing similar locations during the training. Here, the model must generalize to entire new rivers with different geology, climate, and human activities. Our key insight is simple. Rivers that are geographically close tend to behave similar. So instead of predicting water quality in isolation, we asked, what can nearby rivers tell us?
In order to accomplish this, we developed geographic k-nearest neighbors meta features. For any location, we identify nearby monitored rivers and compute distance-weighted summaries of their water quality. Geographic and environmental distances alone are only moderately correlated. Nearby stations may be in different environments, and distant stations might actually have similar conditions. Using KNN meta features allows us to create a spatial interpolation framework that captures a core principle of our approach, that nearby rivers share geological and hydrological characteristics, while blending geographic neighbors with environmentally similar but physically distant stations. This accounts for the moderate correlation and is especially valuable for predicting results in the validation set, where the nearest training stations may be in different biomes, but environmentally similar stations exist further away. We used multiple k-scales, from k=1 for hyperlocal geology to k=30 for regional trends, and fed all of this into a regularized XGBoost model, which is naturally able to capture complex interactions, manage nonlinear feature relationships, and handle missing values and outliers. Through this, we can begin to achieve robust spatial generalization. What makes this powerful is that we're not just using nearby rivers, we're encoding how they behave over time, their statistical patterns, and using that as input into the model.
To ensure real-world performance, we simulate the unseen scenario during the training process. By removing each station from its own neighborhood, we prevent data leakage and force the model to learn transferable relationships.
All right, folks, this is it, the last session of the day. But hold on to that energy because this is seriously going to be a great one, okay? Fantastic one to close one. So we've been talking all day about how AI is changing the way that we build, yeah? But what happens when the cost of building approaches zero? When code itself is no longer the biggest hurdle. So if you are thinking about starting something, or maybe you already have, our next speaker is going to break down what actually wins in that world. So please join me in welcoming Jeremiah Aoyang, General Partner at Blitzscaling Ventures.
Let's go, Danica. All right. That's right. This is the closer. This is going to be fun. All right, let's find out who's in the audience. How many of you are developers? Raise your hand. Make some noise. I said make some noise. All right, that's great. And how many of you are founders? Great, make some noise. You're putting your career and your life on the line. I'm Jeremiah. I'm a general partner at Blitzscaling Ventures. I invest in early stage AI startups. You might have heard about the book called Blitzscaling, written by Chris Ye and Reid Hoffman. I work with that team. Reid is our advisor and LP, and then Chris is my friend for 20 years. Guys and gals, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The good news is it's never been easier to build an app. The bad news is it's never been easier to build an app. And this means that there are over 47,000 AI projects and startups. According to the website, there's an AI for that. It's easy to build any feature or any company or any product. So the question is, what are you going to build that actually means you can sustain and win your market? How are you going to build a profitable business? How are you going to build an actual company that can exit? How are you going to build a feature at your company that's going to make a difference? And I think that is the key strategy. Now, today we've had all these amazing tech talks, but the key that is missing is actually talking about the business strategies. So how do you win when code is free? How do you win when code is disposable? How do you win when your competitor can copy you in 7 days? Right? Almost all the booths have showed us how easy it is to build with AI agents or LLMs. It's so simple to build. Well, to prove that point, this is a graph from Stanford HAI, and this shows that the technical moats are coming down to 0. These are the top AI labs, and you can see out of over 1,500 points, the deviation between them, which is measured in ELO points, is only 25 points. There's no differentiation. The foundation models can copy each other in days, hours, and now minutes. How will you build an app that can sustain in a similar way when everybody can copy everything you're doing? And this is the challenge, and this is the opportunity. So I'm so excited that Snowflake asked me to come here to present our point of view, and I'm also referencing Reid Hoffman's thesis on the book Blitzscaling that he wrote with Chris Ye, my friend, and this is how we invest. So I'm so excited to share with you. I have 5 takeaways for you to close out the show. These are the strategies that you can use. You learned how to build this entire week, but how do you build the right way? So the 5 strategies are to develop your flywheel. Now, let me be clear. Technology is important, and it's not going to go away. It's assumed that you have great tech, great product, great team, great customers. That's assumed. That is baseline now. But in addition to that, you must have these 5 components. And the more of these components you have, the faster and the larger that your flywheel is going to turn, and the more successful that your business will be. So let's go through the 5. The first one is having proprietary data. So how many of you, by show of hands, have access to proprietary data? Okay, that's about half of the room. So it means 50% of the room has commodity data that everybody else has. That's not good enough. So how do you get proprietary data? Well, you can make a partnership with your customers. You can get their data. You could work with enterprises. You can have a legal contract that only you get access to their data. And if you can't do that, or you need to bolster the data, you can create it with synthetic data. Ideally, you want to look for synthetic data that can be updated around real time. So you're looking for all those components. So think about how you can do that. And of course, once you get that data, there's actually a little network effect that happens, a data effect, a learning effect. And then we see, of course, that the large language models are building and training their models off our data. So you also want to copy this strategy as well. So step 1, the first part of the flywheel is to get that proprietary data. By the way, we're going to take questions at the end. We're going to take 3 questions at the end. All right, let's go back to the flywheel. The second thing, and this is a critical thing, is to actually have your own community. So I run an event called Llama Lounge. Has anybody heard of Llama Lounge? Yes, lots of hands. Llama Lounge usually has 300 to 500 developers and founders that come out. VCs is around 20%, and 15% are corporate AI buyers. And we bring all these AI leaders together in one room. 10 startups are chosen to pitch on stage, and we source from YC, A16Z, NFX, and of course my own firm, Blitzscaling Ventures. We put them on stage, and they also have their demo booths. And this is really critical. Friends, in the age of automation, the one thing that I see is going to be a differentiator is what I call a premium on humanity. A premium on humanity. Look at us right now. All of us can build software, but you have chosen to be here right in this room. We want to be together. And this means customer care, customer experiences, unique product experiences, activations, community. This is the important thing. When everything else is automated, we actually want to be together, and we actually want to build community. So what does this actually look like? Well, you should use your community not just for customer care, but also for product innovation, also for marketing, also for sales, and also for recruiting. Let me give you an example of that. Crew AI, who we are investors in, and maybe you just saw Joao on stage, he's such a great speaker. They've built an amazing community, and they just crossed over 50,000 GitHub stars. And when I attend their hackathons, there's a really passionate group, and they have a booth right back over there that's packed. So community is a key thing, and one of the things that they've done to bolster the community is it's open source. Open source is a strategy, and we have backed a couple of open source companies because it fosters rapid community on the freemium side, which can turn to a premium. So that's a form of using community to actually build these new products. This is the kind of the secret, is having a thriving community. And we want to see this on GitHub. We want to see this in your Discord. We want to see this on your product hunt launch. Now, yes, I know you can fake these numbers. You can buy people to like click on stuff. We know that. But when we see code commits and we see developers showing up to hackathons and we see people using your products, we're also looking for that as investors as well. So that's part number 2, is having a thriving community in addition to just building a kick-ass product. Okay, what does PLG stand for? Product-led growth. Now, I've got to really dispel people. There's a misconception that people think word of mouth or social media is product-led growth. No, that's wrong. Social media is not product-led growth. People talking on the show floor about your product is not product-led growth. Product-led growth is when the features actively invite new users to join, and they usually stay. So it actually has to be embedded into the product. It can't just be people are talking about you on social. That's word of mouth. That's viral marketing. That's a different strategy. That's a different game. Product-led growth is a key thing that has to be built into your product from the start. So having a freemium to premium product might be a good idea. You think of Slack and Zoom and DocSend and every social network, they all have product-led growth. Even B2B tools or B2BC tools like Granola. Who's using Granola? Man, I have this tool on all the time, recording all my meetings. And then, of course, when it captures the meeting information, it uses a large language model and organizes the notes. And then I share it with my fellow partners at the firm, which spurs product-led growth. So I brought it into the firm, and it spread into the firm, and then it spreads into our portfolio companies, and they spread it to their customers. And so that is product-led growth. The product spreads on its own. And at Blitzscaling, we're looking for this data, and we actually ask startups for the K factor, like how is the product growing? Do new customers bring in new customers? And sometimes I want to strip away the data. I ask the founder to strip away the advertising data, strip away the marketing data, strip away the sales data. I want to see, does your product actually spread on its own? That's true product-led growth. Does that make sense? Cool. I know you guys can build this. All right. Next is distribution channels. This is a classic blitzscaling strategy. And if you don't know the blitzscaling book, it started out in 2015. Reid Hoffman and Chris taught a class at Stanford, and they interviewed the top founders from .com, Web 2, the sharing economy. Web 3 hadn't come. Gen AI didn't even exist yet. And they found out these companies have some of these strategies to actually be the big winners. And one of the key things is called distribution. So if you're talking to a VC, they may ask you, what's your go-to-market, but also, what's your distribution strategy? The distribution strategy, also known as a channel relationship or channel partners, are your partners that can take your product to market for you, people that can resell for you. So this could be a service provider. This can be a consulting firm that you build a relationship with. This could be, could be Capgemini, KPMG, or Deloitte, right? Or it can be any of those large consulting firms, or it could be smaller agencies. Maybe you're working with marketing agencies. It could be with influencers. We backed a company in India that has influencers that create content on LearnTube, and then they spread it with their communities. That's a distribution channel. But it could also be software. So you can partner with software companies. Who should you partner with? Oh, yes, of course, Snowflake. They have a partner program, and so you can talk to the staff here. You might want to be listed in their partner program where they will distribute your product for you at low cost. That's the goal. Get other people to do your sales and marketing and biz dev for you. Obviously, there's NVIDIA has their channel program called Inception, and every single tech company has these programs. So you want to get looped into these programs whether it's services or software companies or other players to distribute your product for you. This is how you scale. Code is a commodity, so you need to leapfrog past your competitors using the distribution strategy. Make sense? All right. Next is called network effects. People get viral effects and network effects confused. They're two different things. Earlier, we talked about viral effects is when somebody talks about something and it spreads or the product spreads virally. That is separate than a network effect. Network effect actually results in loyalty. A definition of a network effect, and I'm sourcing blitzscaling, is that as every new user and customer joins, the value increases for everybody else. And this should be a low-cost strategy for you. So you think about Uber. The more riders they have, the more drivers want to come. You think about Airbnb. The more hosts they have, the more guests want to come, and vice versa. So that's a network effect. Social networks have this, marketplaces, data platforms. There's over 6 different types of network effects in the AI space. You can find this on my blog or the Blitzscaling book, or ask GPT, of course. And network effects mean that as more people join, the value increases for others. This is the critical thing so your company can grow, increase value. And when your customers come to join, they see there's so much value that they're not going to want to leave. It results in loyalty and low churn. Let me give you an example. This is a data effect, a platform play. One of the startups that we are so proud to invest in is called Composio. Have you heard of Composio? It's a developer tool where you can connect your agent into thousands of existing APIs and connections, CRMs, foundation models, agentic tools, and beyond. So they built a central place so you can make all of those connections into one hub, and then you can make it useful. And they also manage the connections as well. So as you know, MCP servers do break over time. So a network effect has got to be key to your business and your product strategy so you can bring all these things together. All right, so that is your flywheel. We've got data, community, product-led growth, distribution strategies, and network effects. This is how you can grow when code is disposable. You must have these as strong as your technology. You need to have both. So let's bring it together. I'll go through the key insights again. Data. Get proprietary data. Wow, all the cameras came up. This is great. Get proprietary data. Get a legal contract. Make sure you're the only one to get it. If you can't get it, augment it with synthetic data. Make it special. Brand it. Make it real-time data so it's always updating. That increases that value. Number 2, community is a key driver. They can help you with marketing, sales, product innovation, recruitment, customer care, and also they'll help you grow that company together. Your community is part of your company. Your community is part of your company. You have to think of it that way. You're not just building software. Number 3, product-led growth. The product has to spread on its own. Again, word of mouth is not product-led growth. Think about the greatest companies in the world, Zoom, Box, Slack. They've all spread because the product requires new users to join, and everybody wants to share that product with each other. Oh, by the way, referral fees, that can be part of that strategy as well. Distribution. This is a partnership with services players and or hardware or software or other players that are going to sell your product for you, reducing your COGS. And then finally, the mecca of all these things is network effects. There's data effects, marketplaces, platform plays, learning effects. There's many different effects. Again, the end result is the value increases as every new customer joins, and they can all benefit. The more people come, the faster the network effect starts to spin. Now, can you do one of these? Can you do 2 of these? Great. The more of these strategies that you layer on top of each other, the stronger your company will be, and the faster that you will beat out your competition. Your competition is going to copy your products every single hour, every single day. You can't stop it. You cannot stop companies from copying your code, but they can't copy this. This is the business strategy that will set you apart. All right. Well, if you want these slides and you want to get access to my very occasional newsletter, like once a month on market trends, this QR code will take you to a Google form. You or your agent can sign up. You'll grab the slides, and then we can stay in contact. But let's open it up to 3 questions. We have the mic from Mr. Francisco over here, And I see a mic back there. Mr. Francisco, there's a hand waving way back there. There's one right here.
Hey, Jeremiah, very nice talk. Thank you for. I liked your last line. Code is disposable, but the strategy is not. So thank you.
Yes.
My question is around the first point you made about data. So when you say proprietary data, can you throw some more light? Is that the data that you generate or
Yes.
some other?
Yes, so it can be a mixture. It should be a mixture. So when I see getting access to proprietary data, you can buy it. You can buy it. You can partner with maybe some big enterprise. By the way, it's estimated that 80% of the world's data is behind a private firewall. Corporate firewall, personal cloud, government cloud, military cloud. Go partner with them. Tell them that you're going to be very responsible with their data. You can use that data. You have exclusive rights to that data. That's extremely valuable. Try those strategies. And then collect data, synthesize it, build it, use synthetic data, build something new, your own database, your own data source that nobody else has. Great question. Next question. I see you back there.
Hi. Oh, goodness, it's on. Okay. Hi. 1 second. I wrote it down because I have ADHD.
Take your time.
Long. Okay. Hi. I'm Rihanna Mackenzie Michelson, and I am the founder. Oh, God. I'm the founder of House of Ivy GBC, a registered B Corp helping students with ADHD focus and complete tasks without the use of expensive therapy or out-of-reach medication. My question for you is, I've been asking a lot of different coding experts for creating an LLM for ethics and safety of responses to sensitive user groups and children. How do you make sure that they will not hallucinate or go off on untested tangents that are detrimental to humans? Do you build a cage around this in prompts and programming, or do you have to build your own LLM from the bottom up using your own ethics, original code, and data?
Thank you for that question. That is a little bit off the area that I'm focusing on, but there's a number of security experts in the space that you can definitely talk to. Thank you for that. One last question. Right over here.
Hi. The question that I have is, in this age where code can be replicated by someone easily, for example, I can re-engineer the specs from Crew AI in a day and rebuild it in Rust in a day.
Well, it is open source, so yes, you can do that.
So if that is the case, how can we build communities for open source software? Because
Great question.
a spec would be done by any lab easily.
That's right. So let's talk about the Crew strategy. It is open source. Why would a VC back an open source product? Well, a couple of reasons. It shows that there's a thriving community of developers. And what we noticed is that they started to build templates and they would share it. Thirdly, the enterprise developers started to adopt the open source, and some of them put it on premise at these large companies, bringing Crew AI in without ever talking to the salespeople at Crew. So the developers were doing the sales for Crew. Now, once there's this network effect, everybody's using these open source templates and they're free, then Crew already has that network effect of loyalty. So it's actually a bottoms-up groundswell strategy, which is a classic military strategy versus top-down, like an Oracle or SAP would do, right? So that is a strategy. Now, of course, if you want all the top updates and you want to get access to their executives, you want time with Joao, you want to be with their sales engineers, you want to be with their forward deployed engineers, you want to get the latest specs, you want to give feedback, you want an on-prem version, you want a secure version, you want a private cloud version, then you better call Crew. And so it's a way to foster open source. So that open source absolutely is a strategic way, if you know what you're doing, that you can grow your company. I think we're at time right now. Snowflake, thanks for letting me be your closing speaker. Code is a commodity. Build with those 5 strategies. I know you got this. Thanks, everybody.
All right, and that is a wrap on our Dev Day Luminary programming. I just want to ask everyone to give one more round of applause to all of our incredible speakers today. I hope each and every one of you are walking away with new ideas, new connections, and maybe just a little bit of that healthy curiosity about where all of this is headed. So thank you again for choosing to spend your day here at Dev Day with us. I can't wait to see you all again next year. Thank you.